We have with us Sridhar Vembu, co-founder and CEO of Zoho Corp. Vanakkam, sir. Many thanks for speaking to PTI as always.
Vanakkam, namaste. Thank you for coming.
Let's start with Zoho's announcements. You've talked about a seller app on ONDC. You've also talked about Zoho IoT. Take us through some of these announcements and what do they mean for the market?
So today we launched Vikra, our seller app for ONDC. And the whole purpose of ONDC, which is a very significant part of our digital public infrastructure, to lower the overall cost of doing e-commerce for our merchants as well as our buyers. Today, if you look at proprietary platforms, they are charging 20%, 30%, 40% commission for us from a merchant to be able to sell on those platforms. And that is a significant tax on the whole ecosystem. ONDC's effort is to unbundle it, open up the whole ecosystem. We are a very active participant in that whole ecosystem. Our Vikra seller app is on the seller side. Similarly, there are buyer side apps. We are not announcing that today. Similarly, there are logistics side. We are not doing anything there right now. Ours is focused on the seller, the merchant side, onboarding them and managing them, taxes, all of that. Also integrating with all the rest of the Zoho suite. For example, our inventory, our books, accounting software, our payments, all of that will be integrated for them. So it's a seller side app to onboard sellers onto the ONDC marketplace.
What is the overall vision that you have drawn up for Zoho in terms of growth over the next 3 to 5 years? What are the different pieces that are likely to come together, in the short to mid-term as you look to expand and grow?
So the way I describe our vision in our context, particularly in the Indian context, is R&D powering RD, rural development. And that's arising from the demographic reality. We have 23 million babies born. Majority are rural, even though a larger percentage of population than the population is born in rural areas, because that's rural birth rate is higher. And if a significant number move to cities, our cities are already bursting at the seams. If we provide the economic opportunity, people will stay. I look at R&D as a crucial way to power that economic growth in rural areas. That's why we want to put R&D jobs there, and that is powering our expansion. And the expansion strategy is to look for all of the R&D intensive tech sectors.
So let us turn to your semiconductor plans. There's been a lot of discussion around Zoho Semiconductor push. If you could just clear the air around that, is it really Zoho which is getting into semiconductors now? Or are you part of a venture, say as an investor, which is getting into semiconductors? And what is the status of those plans?
Yeah. First, it's not Zoho's own venture. Zoho is an investor in this venture. And it's a company called Selectric.
Zoho is an investor in
right?
So you're a part of the venture which will do the semiconductor push.
Yes, exactly. And the India Semiconductor Mission is very much active. The government is very interested in bringing semiconductor fabs to India. We want to play our part in it as a technology player. And so we have our application pending. It is still, there's significant amount of evaluation to go through, and for a very good reason. That is, these are very complicated technologies. The semiconductor manufacturing is highly complex, and most of the technologies are not based in India. We have to license technologies. So the nature of those companies we license from, their business plans, their longevity, all of that have to be evaluated, because we are going to depend on them initially, at least. Long term, our goal is to do the R&D. But to get started, we have to license technology. And when the government has to support us, it has to evaluate the viability of all these plans. So very critical evaluation is going on. It is too premature to announce anything. That is why I clarified that. So the only correct thing is our application is pending.
With the government?
With the government, yes.
And what would be your investment and your role in that venture?
Zoho is an investor. We are committing a few $100 million, which is not yet, those final sums have to be decided, because only after the approval can we exactly tell how much we have to invest, what would be the government capital subsidy for it. All of that is yet to be decided, but a few $100 million is the number.
Let's move to data sovereignty. I wanted to get your views on how you see India's push towards data sovereignty and digital public infrastructure. You have talked in the past as well of how it breaks monopolies, how it has not just lowered the cost but prevented monopolies from taking shape. How do you look at that? And also India's strides when it comes to AI, the AI piece, if you could just talk about those two.
So this whole digital public infrastructure, India has emerged as a very strong player in this whole area. In fact, we are a global leader in this. I don't believe any other country has this much like DPI investment going in and this many standards coming out. And the PI is a shining success story for India. The ONDC is next in line, there is health stack, all of that. And in this, we are leapfrogging the West, leapfrogging much of the developed world in this. And the critical role in this is to prevent the formation of monopolies by controlling the standards. And as an example, I'll give you an example where a standard is not yet there. Take messaging platforms. WhatsApp is a good example. And WhatsApp doesn't interoperate with the Telegram or our own RTI, any of that. And on the other hand, emails interoperate. Technically, it is possible to interoperate, but it's right now under lock and key by proprietary players. The government could force this open by mandating it, that you want to operate in India, we want messaging standards. I would strongly support it because there is no reason for monopolies in these. Email is not a monopoly. Why should messaging be a monopoly? The same way payment infrastructure. No, that's not a monopoly. It's open to all. That is a very good thing. That's why Zoho is able to play in this. Now we announced that in the payments for UPI, for commerce, for vendors, all that. Business to business payments, all of that. So these type of standards are very important. DPI is playing a vital role. We are very happy to play our part in that.
I have a million questions to ask you, but very quickly, sir, I wanted to understand from you, do you worry about the race for AI, the blind race for AI? Because there are some critics who actually say, especially in the West, that the kind of investments that is happening in infrastructure, we're really not seeing those return on investments yet. There is also a worry about safe AI, the safety, accountability of AI biases creeping in, AI taking over humanity. How do you look at AI in the backdrop of all of these aspects?
I would dismiss the AI taking over humanity. That's not my concern. But the investment is driven by a lot of, as they say, hopium. I don't believe the sector can take hundreds of billions productively. That means that companies that should not be funded are getting funded, not just small amounts, huge amounts. Not just 50 million, maybe 500 million. That's what is happening right now. But the marketplace will sort it out. The adoption is still slower, and there is significant adoption going on, but away from this public eye. Like we are adopting AI in a significant way across our product suite, but we are not spending hundreds of millions of dollars on it. We are spending millions of dollars, maybe $20 million on it. So that's the difference between what is going on in the public investment versus what is happening in the private space. And as for other things about privacy, those are real concerns, because when you put your data into a AI and that's used for training, it essentially memorizes it and makes it part of some opaque weights somewhere. We don't know where your particular data is memorized, but sometime it could regurgitate that data. So that's why it's important that all of this, there will be standards that will emerge over time. It's too soon, but this whole bubble makes it difficult to guess where things are going. So we just have to take it month to month.
Let me ask you, this whole standoff between startups and the big tech, we have seen, it actually playing out in different episodes, across, multiple months, many months now, sometimes manifesting itself in maps, sometimes about Play Store policies. Do you see the startup versus big tech as something that will sort of accelerate, become more high voltage kind of a standoff in future as Indian startups assert themselves?
Yeah. First of all, let's look at the US itself. Just about a month ago, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. declared in a case that Google is a monopoly. That's the first time Google has been declared a monopoly. The remedies on it, that is, it's now declared a monopoly. What to do about it still pending in court, but it has been now, Google has lost the case, it's been declared a monopoly. So that's a legal verdict in the US. And that is now, it has reverberations worldwide. European Union is paying attention, India should be paying attention, and that means that these companies have to be regulated. These large tech companies have to be regulated, and in some cases broken up, which is very clear. And so that is, the process has started already in the US. I believe that will only accelerate, because it's not just startups in India. It is startups everywhere. It is smaller companies. An open competition is very important. I mentioned about messaging monopolies, messaging lack of standards. Those are to be broken up too.
What is your view on this 70-hour work week? So there was a lot of discussion around that, but also recently we heard about the tragic death of a young employee in one of the large accounting firms, which has actually brought into the spotlight the issue of mental well-being. And I ask you this because in the industry we have been discussing this 70-hour work week, why shouldn't it be extended? Where do you weigh on these debates?
Yeah, see, we have been around 27, 28 years, and I want to work another 28 years if possible. But that means I cannot burn myself out. I don't want any of our people to burn themselves out. If we extract the mostest for 3 years, then they get burnt out. This suicide is very tragic, but there is also the burnout and all depression, all of these issues too, right? So that's why there has to be a balance in this. And I don't believe any company pushing employees very, very hard can sustain that thing long term, that type of a pace. And then there is a second factor. See, we are bringing young people from various places, smaller towns, into big cities. And the first problem is, of course, loneliness. They come into workforce lonely. And we see these problems ourselves. We have encountered this. The second thing is, of course, commute. And our 2-hour commutes are now becoming increasing the norm in our cities. Bangalore is a classic example. And then you add on top of that the work pressure. So you already have loneliness, you have long commutes, stressful work condition. So you are throwing people into a very big pressure cooker. And very tragically, some people break. Other people are broken. Some people entirely break, other people are broken. So this is the outcome. And I believe that is why we have to diversify geographically more. Every activity shouldn't be in one place. And we have to think different about how we build long-term companies.
How do you look at the IPO frenzy among startups? Is this more of excitement or is it rooted in strong fundamentals?
It's both. There's always both. Whenever there is a frenzy about anything, there'll be a kernel of a real trend, and then there's a lot of frenzy around it. And so, and then as Warren Buffett said, only when the tide goes out, you know who is swimming naked. So that applies to all of this too.
If you look at the global scenario, there is a lot of weakness, global macroeconomic worries. There is also this fear that the tech spends are not going to rise immediately. There are geopolitical risks. What are the biggest challenges before the Indian IT industry today? And also the US elections. How do you see the outcome of US elections impacting the fate of the Indian outsourcing industry? Let's say if Donald Trump were to come to power, he's been, always a proponent of buy American, be American, make America, great again, kind of a philosophy.
So first of all, already, there was a headline just 2 days ago, I believe, in the Wall Street Journal, which said software jobs are very hard to find, becoming increasingly hard to find in the US. It's already true. And even in India, we are seeing that slowdown. And the reason is that there is software productivity trends where there's a massive increase in software productivity coming. That as a necessary, it puts pressure on jobs. When weaving machines arrived, weavers are put at risk, right? So that is why that trend is real, and we may not be able to see the kind of software job growth we saw before. On the other side, in spite of whatever we talk about deglobalization, all that, the global capability centers are booming in India because of the access to talent. In other words, companies are not recruiting in India for US. They are recruiting in India to do R&D, fundamental work in India itself. That is a very good trend. But we must geographically diversify this, not push them into the same cities as before. So that's a good trend for India. It also raises our technology capabilities within our nation.
I want to close by asking you about your views on AI and will it lead to layoffs? The economic survey in July had warned that there could be potential challenges of AI as well, and that it is a responsibility of companies to think harder about how AI should augment the labor instead of displacing workers. As someone who is talking about AI, your thoughts, and is it a potential threat to hiring?
It will. The mix of jobs will change. What the old categories of jobs you're hiring for, they will change. In Zoho itself, we are pushing more towards customer engineering, I call it, customer-facing engineering roles, taking our product, helping to verticalize and customize for particular markets, particular customers, particular geographies, languages, all of that. A lot of the talent will go in that direction. But in general, I think purely just a software engineering role will see slower growth due to AI.
Mr. Vembu, it was wonderful speaking to you. As always, many thanks for speaking to PTI.
Thank you.